Queen Yuna stood at the tall window of her throne room and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the soft glow of the Valari homeworld, her daughter was smiling. Hana had left 3 days ago on a goodwill visit to Aster Gate, the Empire's largest border outpost. She had begged her mother for weeks. "I want to see the soldiers," she had said. "I want them to know their princess cares about them." Yuna had said no at first. Then, no again. Then, looking into her daughter's bright, stubborn eyes, she had said yes. She regretted it now. The first report came at dawn, a junior officer's voice, shaking, cutting through static. The Kel Dominion had launched an attack on Aster Gate. Not a raid, not a skirmish. A full invasion. Thousands of ships, millions of drones. The insectoid swarm had come out of dark space like a tide of black water, and Aster Gate was drowning in it. Yuna felt her blood go cold. She ordered the War Council to assemble. Within minutes, the Great Hall filled with admirals, generals, and advisors, all of them speaking at once, all of them afraid of trying to hide it. Lord Galen, her oldest counselor, stood at her side with his hands folded behind his back and his face carved from stone. "The fleet at Aster cannot hold," Admiral Kyung reported. His holographic image flickered. He was aboard his flagship, already moving toward the border. "The Kel numbers are beyond anything we have seen. They are not raiding, Your Majesty. They are consuming." "My daughter is there," Yuna said quietly. The room went silent. "Get her out," the Queen said. Every ship in range turned toward Aster Gate. But the Valari were a proud and ancient people, and their fleets were built for precision, not speed. They moved like dancers through space, graceful, beautiful, and slow. The Kel moved like insects, because that is what they were. Fast, endless, hungry. The next 3 hours were the longest of Yuna's life. She stood in the command center and listened to the reports. Aster Gate's outer ring fell first, then the inner stations, then the docking bays. Valari soldiers fought bravely, but the Kel drones poured through every crack, every corridor, every broken seal. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners usually. They simply devoured everything in their path. Then came the transmission from Hana's escort ship. It was broken, filled with noise and screaming. The escort captain's voice came through first. "The princess's ship has been boarded. We are attempting to—" The voice cut out. Then another voice, younger, frightened, trying to be brave. "Hana. Mother, I am here. They are breaking through the door. I can hear them. Mother, I want you to know." Silence. Yuna stared at the screen for a long time after the signal died. No one in the room spoke. No one moved. They could feel their queen's mind, her telepathic presence reaching out across the void, searching for her daughter's thoughts, her daughter's heartbeat, her daughter's life, reaching and finding nothing but cold, empty space. Lord Galen was the first to speak. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the princess's escort has been destroyed. No escape pods were launched. We must consider the possibility that—" "Do not finish that sentence," Yuna said. "Your Majesty." "I said do not." The days that followed were dark. Aster Gate was lost. The Valari fleet arrived too late and found nothing but wreckage and Kel patrol ships circling like vultures. The official reports listed the dead. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of civilians, diplomats, engineers, children who had lived on the station with their families, and one princess, status unknown. The Galactic Union sent messages of sympathy. The elder races, the Torvari, the Seluan, the Pale Collective, all expressed their deep sorrow and their firm intention to do absolutely nothing. The Kel were too dangerous. The cost of war was too high. Surely the Valari understood. Surely diplomacy was the wiser path. Yuna read every message. She responded to none of them. Lord Galen came to her chambers on the 5th night. He found her standing at the same window, looking at the same stars. "The council believes we should negotiate," he said. "The Kel may be open to a territorial exchange. If we offer them the outer colonies, they may withdraw from Aster space." "And my daughter?" Galen hesitated. "The council believes the princess is likely dead, Your Majesty. The sooner we accept this, the sooner we can protect what remains." Yuna turned from the window. Her eyes were dry. But the air around her trembled with telepathic energy, and Galen took a step back without meaning to. "I carried her for 2 years in my body," Yuna said. "I felt her first thought before she could speak. I know the shape of her mind the way I know my own heartbeat. And I am telling you, Galen, she is not dead. I would know. A mother would know." Galen bowed and left. He did not argue. Even he, old and political and careful, knew better than to argue with that voice. On the 7th day, something happened that no one expected. A young human intelligence officer named Jiwoo, stationed at a small and unimportant Galactic Union outpost near the border, was running routine signal analysis on captured Kel communications. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They had only been part of the Union for 40 years. Most elder races still thought of them as clever animals, short-lived, emotional, too loud, too soft, too everything. Their intelligence work was considered basic at best. But Jiwoo was patient, and she was good at patterns. She had been listening to Kel encrypted channels for months, building a cipher key one fragment at a time. And on that 7th night, she decoded a message that made her sit up straight in her chair. It was a Kel logistics order. A transport manifest for a high-value biological specimen, species Valari, Royal Class Neural Signature, being moved from the wreckage of Astergate to a bio-prison deep in Kel territory. The specimen was alive. It was being kept sedated. It was considered extremely valuable for neural extraction research. Jiwoo read the message 3 times. Then she ran to her commander's office. Far away, on the Valari homeworld, Queen Yuna stood at her window and pressed her hand against the glass. She could not hear her daughter's thoughts. She could not feel her mind. But somewhere deep inside her chest, in a place that had nothing to do with telepathy and everything to do with being a mother, she felt something stubborn and warm refuse to go out. Hana was alive. She was sure of it. Outpost Sigma 12 was not the kind of place anyone chose to be. It sat on the edge of nowhere, a small human-run station built from recycled ship parts and stubbornness. The hallways smelled like engine grease and instant coffee. The lights flickered when the heating turned on. Most of the soldiers stationed there had either volunteered for the quiet or been sent there because someone higher up wanted them out of the way. Commander Yunji was both. She had been a rising star once, the youngest human officer to command a border station. Then she had disagreed with a Union admiral, in public, loudly, about the treatment of refugees from a Kel border raid. The admiral had smiled and reassigned her to Sigma 12, where she could disagree with the walls all she liked. So when Jiwoo burst into her office at 2 in the morning, out of breath and holding a datapad like it was a live grenade, Yunji was already awake. She was always awake. Sleep was for people who did not spend their nights reading Kel signal traffic and wondering when the swarm would come for them too. "Commander," Jiwoo said, "I found something." Yunji read the decoded Kel transmission. She read it again. Then she leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. "The Valari princess is alive," she said. "Yes, ma'am, being transported to a Kel bioprison. Based on the trajectory data, I estimate she will arrive at the fortress of Narok within 6 days." Narok. Yunji closed her eyes. Everyone in border service knew about Narok. It was a living fortress, a massive biological structure. The Kel grew from organic matter, deep in their territory. It served as a prison, a laboratory, and a feeding ground. No species had ever raided Narok and survived. Most did not even try. "Have you reported this to Union Command?" Yunji asked. "They forwarded it to the Joint Council." "And?" Jiwoo hesitated. "The Torvari said the intelligence was unverified. The Selawun said it was not their concern. The Valari High Council, Lord Galen, called it unreliable noise from a primitive species." Yunji smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Of course he did." She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars were cold and distant. Somewhere out there, a girl was being dragged into a nightmare, and every powerful civilization in the galaxy had decided it was not their problem. "How many combat-ready soldiers do we have on this station?" Yunji asked. 46, ma'am. I need 12. Volunteers only. No orders, no records, no union backing. If this goes wrong, it was never sanctioned. We were never here." Jiwoo stared at her. "Ma'am, that's suicide, probably. Career ending, definitely. But that girl is alive, and she will not be alive much longer if someone does not go get her." Unji turned from the window, put out the call, quietly. The call went out at dawn. By noon, 31 soldiers had volunteered. Unji chose 12. She picked them carefully. Not the strongest or the loudest, but the steadiest. The ones who could stay calm when everything was on fire. A pilot named Sujin who could fly anything with an engine. 2 engineers, Minho and Jaewon, who had a reputation for fixing the unfixable. A communications specialist. 6 infantry soldiers with border combat experience. And 1 medic. Corporal Taeho Park. Taeho was 27 years old. He had brown eyes, a quiet voice, and hands that never shook, even when they probably should have. He had served 3 tours on the border, patching up soldiers who had been torn apart by Kel drones, holding the hands of dying men and women while telling them it was going to be okay. He was not big, he was not loud, he did not give speeches or make promises. He just showed up, every time, and did the work. When he heard about the mission, he did not ask about the odds. He did not ask about payment or glory. He asked one question: "Is the girl still alive?" "We believe so," Unji said. "Then I'm going." His squad leader Doyun found him in the armory 30 minutes later, packing his medical kit with the focused calm of a man preparing for a walk in the park. "You know what Narok is," Doyun said. "Yes," Taeho replied. "You know no one has ever come back from a Kel bio prison." "Yes. You know you're an idiot." Taeho looked up and almost smiled. "Yes." Doyun sighed, the sigh of a man who had known Taeho for 4 years and had lost every argument with him. "Fine, I'm coming too. You don't have to. Someone has to keep you alive long enough to save the princess. You're terrible at saving yourself." The team assembled in the station's cargo bay that evening. 12 humans in worn combat armor, standing in a loose circle under flickering lights. They did not look like heroes. They looked tired, underpaid, and slightly annoyed about the coffee situation on the station. But they were there. Unji briefed them herself. She told them everything. The Kel transport route, the estimated location of Narak, the layout of a biofortress based on the little intelligence they had. She told them the fortress was alive, that it would try to eat them, that the Kel would outnumber them 1,000 to 1. She told them no one was coming to help. No Valari fleet, no Union support, no Elder Race cavalry. "You will be alone," she said. "If you die out there, no one will know. If you succeed, half the galaxy will pretend they helped. That is the deal." Nobody left. In the corner of the cargo bay, an old Torvari diplomat passing through the station watched the humans prepare. He had lived for 800 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He turned to his aide and said, "They live barely a century. Why would they throw those years away for an alien child they have never met?" His aide, who was young and had spent time among humans, said, "I do not think they see it that way, sir." "Then how do they see it?" The aide thought for a moment. I think they see a child who is afraid, and they cannot bear it." The Torvari diplomat said nothing. He watched the humans check their weapons, test their armor seals, and share bad jokes about the food they would miss. Then he turned and walked away, and for the first time in his very long life, he felt something he could not name. It sat in his chest like a stone, heavy and warm, and it did not go away for a long time. That night, Tejo sat on the edge of his bunk and wrote a letter to his mother. He told her he loved her. He told her he was sorry he did not call more often. He told her he was doing something important, and if he did not come back, he wanted her to know he chose it. He folded the letter and put it in his locker. He did not send it. Not yet. In the morning, 12 humans boarded a salvaged Kel shuttle and flew into the dark. The Kel shuttle smelled like rot. It was not a smell any of them could describe exactly, but it sat in the back of the throat and refused to leave. The shuttle was a captured vessel, taken from a Kel raiding party 2 years ago and kept in storage at Sigma 12, because nobody wanted to fly it, and nobody wanted to touch it. The walls were not metal. They were something between bone and shell, dark and slightly warm, and if you pressed your hand against them, you could feel a faint pulse, like the ship was still alive. Sujin flew it anyway. She sat in the pilot's chair with her jaw tight and her hands steady, and did not complain, because Sujin never complained about anything except the temperature of her tea. Jiwoo had given them a signal mask, a device that mimicked Kel biosignatures and made the shuttle appear as a returning scout on long-range sensors. It would not survive close inspection, but it would get them through the outer patrols if they were lucky and quiet. They were both, barely. The journey took 4 days, 4 days in a dead Kel ship, eating ration packs, sleeping in shifts on the floor, listening to the faint biological hum of the walls around them. Tejo spent most of the time checking and rechecking his medical supplies. He had packed everything he could carry: bandages, stimulants, coagulants, painkillers, a portable heart monitor, 2 emergency blood expanders. It was not much. Valari biology was different from human biology in almost every way. He had spent the 4 days reading everything he could find about Valari physiology, which was not much either. "You're going to wear out that datapad," Doyan said on the 3rd night, sitting down beside him. "Their neural system is connected to their circulatory system," Tejo said, not looking up. "If the Kel have been draining her neural energy, her heart could be failing too. I need to stabilize both at the same time. With human medicine, with what I have." Doyan looked at him for a long moment. "You really think you can save her?" Tejo finally looked up. His eyes were tired but steady. "I think I have to try." On the 5th day they saw Narak. It appeared on the viewport like a tumor floating in space, a massive, dark, organic structure the size of a small moon, covered in ridges and pulsing veins. It glowed faintly with green bioluminescence, and even from a distance, they could see things moving on its surface. Kel drones, crawling like ants on a hill. Nobody spoke for a while. "That," Minho the engineer said quietly, "is the ugliest thing I have ever seen." "Wait until we're inside," Jaewon replied. Sujin brought the shuttle in low, following a stream of Kel transport ships returning to the fortress. The signal mask held. They docked at an outer port without triggering any alarms, and for one brief, beautiful moment, Tejo allowed himself to think this might actually work. Then they opened the hatch, and hope became much harder to hold. The inside of Narak was alive. The corridors were made of the same bone shell material as the shuttle, but thicker, wetter, and warm. The floor had a slight give to it, like walking on muscle. The walls breathed, slow, rhythmic expansions that made the tunnels narrow and widen, like the throat of some enormous animal. The air was thick and sweet and wrong. They moved in formation, 6 soldiers in front, Tejo and another soldier in the middle, 4 soldiers behind, weapons up, lights on. Every step careful and quiet. They made it 200 meters before the fortress noticed them. It started with a sound, a deep, vibrating hum that ran through the walls and floor and up through their boots into their bones. Then, the corridor ahead of them began to close, the walls pressing together like lips sealing shut. "Move!" Do-yoon shouted. They ran. The fortress was waking up around them, corridors shifting, new walls growing from the floor like teeth. Behind them, they heard the clicking, the sound of Kell drones, hundreds of them, pouring from chambers in the walls. The first firefight was chaos. The drones came from everywhere, ceiling, floor, cracks in the walls that had not been there seconds ago. They were fast, armored, and they attacked with razor-sharp limbs and acid that burned through combat armor like water through paper. The humans fired back with plasma rifles and grenades, filling the corridors with light and noise and smoke. 3 soldiers died in the first 10 minutes. Yunho was pulled into a wall that opened and closed around him like a mouth. Jihei was overwhelmed by drones at a junction. Sangwoo took an acid hit to his chest and told Taeho to keep moving before he stopped breathing. Taeho wanted to stop. Every part of him screamed to stop, to kneel beside Sangwoo, to try to save him. But Do-yoon grabbed his arm and pulled him forward, and Taeho kept moving because stopping meant everyone died. They fought deeper. The fortress threw everything at them: acid, drones, walls that tried to crush them, floors that turned soft and tried to swallow their feet. But humans, it turned out, were hard to stop. Not because they were stronger or faster than the Kell. They were not. But because they adapted. When the corridors closed, Minho and Jaewon cut through walls with plasma torches. When the drones came from above, the soldiers formed a ceiling shield with their armored backs. When the acid came, they used the dead drones' shells as barriers. Their fortress was designed to break species that relied on order, on technology, on psychic coordination. Valari froze when their telepathic links were jammed. Torvari retreated when their shields failed. Saloon simply gave up. Humans did none of these things. Humans screamed, bled, cursed, improvised, and kept coming. Their adrenaline made them faster. Their pain tolerance kept them fighting with injuries that should have dropped them. Their short, desperate lives had taught them one thing the elder races had forgotten. Every second mattered, and none of them could be wasted. They reached the prisoner block after 40 minutes that felt like 40 years. It was a vast chamber deep in the core of Narak, filled with rows of pods, translucent organic sacs, each containing a captured alien suspended in thick fluid. Taeho could see dozens of species, Torvari, Seluin, and others he did not recognize, all unconscious, all connected to the Kell's feeding apparatus by dark tendrils that pulsed with stolen neural energy. "Find her," Taeho said. They searched. Do-yoon held the entrance with 4 soldiers, while the others moved through the rows. The drones were still coming, the sound of clicking growing louder behind them. Taeho found her in the deepest row. Princess Hana floated inside a pod that was darker and thicker than the others. She was small, smaller than he expected, young. Her silver-white hair drifted around her face like seaweed in still water. Her skin, which should have been pale gold, was gray. Her eyes were closed. Tendrils of dark organic matter were attached to her temples, her spine, her wrists, pulsing slowly, pulling something bright and invisible out of her and into the walls of the fortress. It was eating her mind. Taeho pressed his hand against the pod. It was warm. He could feel her heartbeat through it, faint, too slow, but there. "I found her," he said into his comms. He worked fast. He cut the pod open with his field knife, caught her body as she fell forward, and laid her on the ground. The tendrils tried to hold on, tightening around her temples. He cut them one by one, carefully, and each one released with a wet snap and a small spray of fluid that burned his hands. He checked her vitals. Heart rate dangerously low, neural activity almost flat. She was dying, not from injury but from being drained empty, like a battery with nothing left to give. He opened his medical kit. He had one chance. He injected her with a human cardiac stimulant to stabilize her heart. Then a neural buffer, a compound designed for human brain injuries, never tested on Valari. He did not know if it would kill her faster, but doing nothing would kill her for certain, and Tejo had never been good at doing nothing. Her heartbeat steadied, just slightly, just enough. He lifted her in his arms. She weighed almost nothing. He looked at his remaining team, 8 soldiers, most of them bleeding, all of them exhausted, the sound of Kel drones growing louder from every direction. "We leave," Tejo said. "Now. All of us." The fortress was screaming. That was the only word for it. The walls of Narak vibrated with a deep, endless sound that was not quite a voice and not quite a siren, but something alive and furious. The team had taken something from the heart of the hive, and the hive knew it. Tejo ran with Hana in his arms. She was unconscious, her head against his shoulder, her silver-white hair streaked with the dark fluid from the pod. She was light, frighteningly light, as if the neural drain had taken not just her mind, but her substance, leaving behind a body made of paper and air. He could feel her heart beating against his chest, slow, unsteady, but present. He held that heartbeat like a promise, and did not let go. Doyun led the way. He was bleeding from a gash on his left side, where a Kel drone had caught him at the prisoner block entrance. But he moved like a man who had decided that bleeding was someone else's problem. He fired his plasma rifle at every shadow that moved. And in Narok, every shadow moved. "Left corridor," Minho shouted from behind, checking the layout on his cracked datapad. 50 meters to the outer ring, then straight to the docking port. "The corridor is closing," Jaewon yelled back. He was right. Ahead of them, the walls were pressing together, the bone shell material growing inward, like a wound healing in reverse. The fortress was trying to seal them inside, to trap them in its belly and digest them at its leisure. Doyun did not slow down. He pulled a plasma grenade from his belt, armed it, and threw it into the narrowing gap. The explosion blew the walls apart in a spray of dark fluid and organic matter, and the team pushed through the opening before it could grow back. Behind them, the clicking was getting louder. The drones were not just following anymore, they were herding. Tejo could feel it, the patterns of movement shifting, the swarm becoming organized, trying to push them into dead ends, into chambers where the walls would close and the acid would come. They lost Yuna, the communications specialist, not the queen, at the third junction. A section of floor gave way beneath her, and she fell into a chamber below. Tejo heard her scream, heard the plasma fire, heard it stop. He kept running. They lost Minho at the fifth junction. He stayed behind to cut open a sealed wall with his plasma torch, waving the others through. Then the drones were on him before he could follow. Jaewon tried to go back. Doyun stopped him. "Move," Doyun said. His voice was flat and hard and final. "Honor him by living." Jaewon moved. 7 soldiers left. Then, the outer ring. The outer ring was wider, the corridors large enough for Kel transport vehicles, and for a brief moment, the team could breathe. Tejo used the pause to check Hana's vitals. Her heart rate was holding, barely, thanks to the stimulant, but the neural buffer was wearing off. Her brain activity was flickering like a candle in wind. He gave her a second injection. He only had one more after this. "How is she?" Doyun asked, leaning against the wall with his hand pressed against his bleeding side. "Alive," Tejo said. "Not for long if we don't get her to a real medical bay." Then we moved faster. They moved faster. The docking port was ahead. Taeho could see the faint outline of their stolen shuttle through a membrane-covered opening. Sujin had stayed with the ship, keeping the engines warm, ready for a launch that every rational calculation said would never happen. But the fortress had one more thing to show them. The wall to their right exploded open, and a Kel warrior stepped through. Twice the height of a man, covered in thick black armor that was part of its body, with 4 arms ending in blades that gleamed with acid. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were clusters of dark orbs that reflected the team's helmet lights like a broken mirror. It moved fast, impossibly fast. The first swing of its arm sent 2 soldiers flying into the wall. One did not get up. The second swing came for Taeho. Doyon stepped in front of it. He fired his plasma rifle point blank into the warrior's face, and when it staggered, he pulled his combat knife and drove it into the joint between the creature's neck and shoulder. The warrior screamed, a high, terrible sound, and brought its bladed arm down across Doyon's back. Doyon fell, but so did the warrior. The plasma burns, and the knife had found something vital, and the enormous creature crashed to the floor, its limbs twitching, its acid blood pooling on the organic ground. Taeho was at Doyun's side in a second, still holding Hana against his chest with one arm, while his other hand checked the wound. The cut was deep, running from Doyun's left shoulder to his right hip, and blood was soaking through his armor at a rate that made Taeho's stomach drop. "Go," Doyun said. His voice was wet. "Not without you." "Taeho," I said, "not without you." Taeho looked at the remaining soldiers, 5 including Jaewon, all of them battered and bleeding and standing. "Someone carry him, now." Jaewon and another soldier lifted Doyun between them. Doyun tried to protest and then passed out, which made things simpler. Taeho shifted Hana in his arms and moved for the shuttle. They breached the docking membrane and ran across the port to the shuttle. Sujin had the hatch open and the engines running. She saw the state of them, 7 people instead of 12, covered in blood and acid burns and dark organic fluid, and said nothing. She just pointed at the medical bay and started the launch sequence. The shuttle ripped free of Narok's docking port like a tooth being pulled. Behind them, the fortress pulsed and shuddered, and then the swarm launched. Dozens of Kel pursuit ships, small and fast and vicious, pouring from Narok's surface like bees from a hive. Sujin flew like someone who had made a personal decision that dying today was not on her schedule. She threw the shuttle through asteroid fields, skimmed the edges of gas clouds, and pulled maneuvers that the shuttle's frame was never designed to survive. The metal groaned, the engines screamed, but the ship held because Sujin told it to, and the ship was more afraid of her than it was of physics. In the medical bay, Taeho worked on 2 patients at once. He sealed Doyun's wound with emergency bonding gel and a pressure bandage, started a blood expander drip, and then turned to Hana. Her vitals were dropping again. He gave her the last neural buffer injection and manually compressed her chest when her heart stuttered, counting the beats like a prayer. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on, stay." On the bridge, Sujin's voice came through the intercom, calm and flat. "We have 14 pursuit ships on us. I can outrun maybe 6. I cannot outrun 14. Jaewon looked at the communications panel. Then he looked at the emergency broadcast system. Then he made a decision that broke about 30 Galactic Union regulations. He opened every channel, every frequency, every band, every signal path available to their little shuttle. And he sent a message. "This is Galactic Union Shuttle Sigma 7, human rescue team returning from Kel territory with Princess Hana of the Valari Empire. The princess is alive. We are under pursuit, requesting any available support. Repeat, the princess is alive." The message went everywhere, to Union outposts, to Elder Race listening stations, to merchant ships and pirate bands and science vessels and anyone with an antenna pointed in the right direction, and to the Valari Royal Fleet. Queen Yuna had been sitting on the bridge of her flagship for 12 days. She had moved the fleet to the very edge of Kel space, as close as she dared, and she had waited. Her council had told her to go home. Lord Galen had told her she was wasting resources. She had ignored all of them, because a mother's certainty was stronger than any council's logic. When the message came through, she stood up so fast, her chair slid back and hit the wall. "All ships," she said, and her voice was the voice of a queen and a mother and a storm. Now, the Valari fleet, 40 warships, beautiful and deadly and burning with light, crossed into Kel space. They hit the pursuit ships like a wave hitting sand. Valari weapons turned the Kel pursuers into dust and fire and nothing, and the shuttle flew through the wreckage and into the safety of the fleet's formation. On the shuttle, Tejo felt the explosions through the hull. He looked up from Hana's pale face and saw, through the small medical bay window, the Valari warships surrounding them like a wall of light. Hana's eyes opened. They were gold, dim and confused, and they focused on the face above her, a strange face. No telepathy, no silver features, no ancient eyes. Just a young man with brown eyes, and blood on his cheeks, and hands that were still pressing against her chest, keeping her heart beating. "Who are you?" she whispered. Tejo looked down at her. His hands were shaking now. They had waited until it was safe to shake. "Nobody important," he said. "You're safe now." The shuttle docked with the Valari flagship. The Valari medical bay was white and quiet, and smelled like light, if light had a smell. The healers moved around Hana's bed in flowing silver robes, their hands glowing with soft telepathic energy as they worked to repair the damage the Kel had done to her mind and body. They spoke in low voices, exchanging information through thought rather than words, and the room hummed with a calm that felt almost sacred. Then the lead healer stopped. She looked at the readings on her display, then looked again. She turned to her colleague with an expression that, on a Valari face, passed for deep confusion. "Her neural pathways," the lead healer said. "They are damaged, yes. The Kel drain was severe, but they have been stabilized. The degradation that should have killed her within hours has been halted." "By our treatment?" "No. Before our treatment. Someone injected her with a compound, crude, chemical-based, not telepathic. A cardiac stimulant and some form of neural buffer." The healer paused. "Human medicine. That should not work on Valari physiology. It should not, but it did. The compounds created a chemical bridge across the damaged neural gaps, temporary, rough, not elegant, but it held. Without it, the princess would have been dead before she reached this ship." The other healers stared at the readings. A human medic saved the heir to the Valari Empire with field medicine designed for human brain injuries. "Yes." There was a long silence. "How?" The lead healer shook her head slowly. "I do not know. Perhaps their medicine is not as primitive as we believed, or perhaps the humans simply refused to accept that it would not work." Queen Yuna entered the medical bay alone. She had asked her guards to wait outside. She had asked her advisors to leave. She had asked Lord Galen, very politely and very firmly, to go somewhere far away and stay there. She walked to the bed where her daughter lay. Hana was sleeping, real sleep now, not the dead emptiness of the Kelpod, but warm, breathing, living sleep. Her color was returning. Her silver-white hair was clean and spread across the pillow. Her face, though thin, was peaceful. Yuna stood beside the bed and looked at her daughter for a very long time. Then she sat down, took Hana's hand in both of hers, and pressed it against her cheek. She did not speak. She did not need to. Her telepathic presence filled the room like sunlight filling a house after a long winter. warm and golden, and so full of love and relief that the healers in the next room felt it through the walls and had to stop working for a moment because their eyes were blurring. On the other side of the ship, in a small guest quarters that the Valari had provided, the surviving members of the rescue team sat in silence. 7 of them. Taeho, Doyeon, Jaewon, Sujin, and 3 others. They were cleaned up, bandaged, fed, and given beds that were softer than anything they had ever slept on. But none of them were sleeping. They were thinking about the 5 who were not there. Yoonho, Jihye, Sungwoo, Minho, and Yuna, the communication specialist who shared a name with a queen and died in a hole in a living fortress 1,000 light years from home. Taeho sat on the edge of his bed, with his hands between his knees. His right arm was in a sling. He had not even noticed the fracture until a Valari healer had quietly taken his arm and set the bone with a touch of telepathic energy. The healer had looked at him with something between respect and pity, and Taeho had thanked her and gone back to his room. A knock came at the door. A Valari officer in a formal white uniform stood outside. "The Queen wishes to see the human who carried her daughter from Narok," the officer said. Taeho looked down at himself. He was wearing a borrowed shirt that was too big for him, and his combat trousers, which still had dark stains he had not been able to wash out. He did not have a clean uniform. He did not have a formal uniform. He did not have anything except what he was wearing and the medical kit he had carried into hell and back. "Okay," he said. The officer led him through corridors of white and silver and light. Valari crew members stopped and stared as he passed. This small, ordinary human with his arm in a sling, and his borrowed shirt, and his quiet face. He did not look like a hero. He looked like a man who needed about 3 days of sleep. The throne room of the Valari flagship was vast. The ceiling arched high above, carved from some pale crystal that caught and held the light of distant stars. The floor was smooth as glass. Along the walls stood members of the Valari court, tall, silver-haired, ancient, their eyes glowing faintly with telepathic light. Lord Galen stood among them, his face carefully blank. And at the center of it all, Queen Yuna waited. She was tall, even for a Valari. Her hair was white silver and fell past her shoulders like water. Her eyes were deep gold, the same shade as her daughter's, and they held a weight of years and grief and power that made the air around her feel heavy. She wore a simple white gown. No crown, no jewels, no symbols of rank. She did not need them. Everything about her said queen. Taeho walked to the center of the room and stopped. He was not sure what to do. He did not know Valari customs. He did not know if he should kneel or bow or speak or stay silent. So he stood there, a tired corporal in a borrowed shirt, and waited. The court expected him to kneel. Lord Galen expected him to make a speech, to ask for reward, for recognition, for political favors. Every species in the galaxy would have. It was how things worked. You saved a princess. You asked for something in return. Taeho said, "Your daughter is alive, Your Majesty. She is recovering well. Your healers are taking care of her." He paused. 5 of my people did not make it home. I would like permission to send their names to their families. That was all. The throne room was silent. Yuna looked at him, and slowly, carefully, she reached out with her telepathic sense and touched the surface of his mind. She did this gently, the way one might touch a bird that had landed on one's hand, ready to pull back at the slightest resistance. What she found there made her stop. There was no hidden plan, no political calculation, no desire for power or gold or fame. There was tiredness, deep and heavy. There was grief, real, raw grief for 5 people he had led into darkness and could not bring back. There was a faint, stubborn warmth that she recognized, because she had felt it in herself for the past 12 days. the warmth of someone who simply could not stand by while someone else suffered. And underneath it all, so quiet she almost missed it, there was a thought. I hope my mom doesn't worry too much. Yuna's composure broke. Not dramatically, she was a queen, and queens did not fall apart in throne rooms. But her eyes filled, and her voice, when she spoke, was not the voice of an empress. It was the voice of a mother, talking to the person who had brought her child home. Thank you, she said. Your people's names will be written in the eternal record of the Valari Empire, alongside our greatest heroes. They will not be forgotten, not in 100 years, not in 1,000, not ever. Taeho nodded. His eyes were bright, but he did not cry. He had not cried since Minho. He would cry later, alone, when it was quiet. For now, he just nodded, and that was enough. In the weeks that followed, Hana recovered. She was young and strong, and the Valari healers were the best in the galaxy, and slowly the color returned to her skin, and the light returned to her eyes, and the strength returned to her voice. She asked about the humans, almost immediately. She wanted to know everything. Who they were, where they came from, why they had come for her. When she was strong enough, she traveled to Outpost Sigma 12. She brought with her the Valari Star of Eternity, the highest honor the Empire could give, a small crystal star that held a fragment of captured light from the Valari sun. It had never been given to a non-Valari in the history of the Empire. She pinned one to Taeho's chest, then Doyeon's, then Jaewon's, Sujin's, and the other 3 survivors. They stood in a line in the cargo bay of Sigma 12, the same cargo bay where they had been briefed, under the same flickering lights, and a princess put stars on their chests and thanked them one by one. Then she turned to 5 empty chairs that had been set in a row at the end of the line. On each chair sat a folded flag, and a name written in both human script and Valari light language. Hana placed a star of eternity on each chair, and she bowed to them, a deep, slow bow that in Valari culture was reserved only for the honored dead of the royal family. Commander Unji, standing at the back of the room, pressed her hand over her mouth and looked at the ceiling. 1 week later, Queen Yuna addressed the Galactic Union. The assembly hall was full. Every species, every empire, every collective and federation and alliance had sent representatives. The Torvari were there, the Saluan, the Pale Collective, all the ancient, powerful, cautious civilizations that had sent their condolences and done nothing. Yuna stood at the center of the hall and spoke quietly. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She told them what happened. She told them that her daughter was taken, and that every great civilization in the galaxy had offered words. She told them that 12 humans, 12 short-lived, under-equipped, supposedly primitive humans had offered their lives. And 5 of them had given those lives, not for politics, not for reward, not for power, but because a girl was afraid and alone in the dark, and they could not live with themselves if they did not try. We have called them young, Yuna said. We have called them primitive. We have looked at their short lives and their loud voices and their strange emotions, and we have thought ourselves superior. We were wrong. She paused. I am announcing today a formal, eternal alliance between the Valari Empire and humanity, not as elder and student, not as patron and protege, as equals, because I have looked into the mind of a human soldier and found something that 1,000 years of civilization has not produced in any elder race in this hall: the simple, unbearable need to help. The hall was silent for a long time after she finished. Back on Sigma 12, the day after the speech, Taeho sat in the common room and finally sent the letter to his mother. Doyun sat next to him, his arm in a cast, his back wrapped in enough bandages to supply a small hospital. What did you write? Doyun asked. Taeho shrugged. Just told her I'm okay. Nothing special happened. Doyun stared at him. Then he laughed. A real, full laugh that hurt his broken ribs, and he did not care. Outside, the stars turned slowly in the dark. Somewhere among them, a queen held her daughter's hand and thought of a tired young man with brown eyes, who had carried a stranger out of hell because he could not bear not to. And in the galactic record, entered by a Valari diplomat who had spent 600 years believing humans were irrelevant, a single note was added to the file on the species known as humanity. Do not misunderstand them. They do not fight because they are fearless. They fight because someone somewhere is afraid.